Millions of Americans took to the streets to protest police violence following the murder of George Floyd last year, and in some instances, they were met with violent crackdowns. Across the country, videos of police officers attacking peaceful protesters began surfacing on social media. Using tear gas, rubber-tipped bullets, bicycles, and batons, police officers deployed an arsenal of so-called less-than-lethal weapons to suppress protest and disperse crowds. But what happens when police unleash these weapons and leave people no path to escape?
Yo, you're corralling us! Where the fuck are we gonna go? Where do we go?
In at least a dozen instances last summer, caught on video in cities like New York, Los Angeles, Portland, Chicago, and Seattle.
Where the fuck they want us to go?
Police used a controversial crowd control strategy known to protesters and civil rights advocates as kettling. The tactic consists of officers surrounding protesters, trapping them in the streets with no clear way out, sometimes for hours, often before tear gassing, beating, and arresting them en masse. Law enforcement officials usually refer to this tactic as corralling, containment, or encirclement, not kettling. And some police departments have denied that they deploy this tactic at all.
First time I'm hearing about kettling being associated with the police. This is not part of our training. It's not something we practice or encourage.
According to a New York police training manual obtained by The Intercept, this crowd control technique is designed to isolate a group of people from a larger crowd for the purpose of making arrests. But in practice, this strategy indiscriminately subjects everyone in a crowd to the same treatment, regardless of individual conduct. Often, once people are surrounded, they are subjected to violence that they have no means of escaping. One particularly brutal example of kettling took place last year in Charlotte, North Carolina, where law enforcement officers trapped hundreds of protesters between buildings and lines of cops before assaulting them with pepper balls, flashbang grenades, and tear gas. The following is a reconstruction, produced in collaboration with Situ Research, that places video evidence in the context of a 3D digital model of the urban environment to gain a better understanding of the sequence of events that transpired that evening. On the evening of June 2, 2020, several hundred protesters were marching in downtown Charlotte, moving northwest on 4th Street. At 9:26 p.m., the crowd passed a group of police officers in riot gear positioned along the march route.
Rory's got a platoon on Tryon, out of sight. Dancer's platoon is stage now on College, out of sight. We're going to push their ass straight up 4th. As soon as they get up on 4th, because we got a bottleneck now, Rory's squad is going to step out and hammer their ass. When they start running down, Dancer's squad is going to step up and hammer their ass. Gas. We're going to fucking top it up. All right, get a bang out. Don't throw it in front of them. I want it behind. Hey, if you have to throw it, don't throw it behind the crowd so they run up. Hey, wave goodbye. They're all about to get gas.
It was the 5th day of protests in the city, and earlier that evening, someone in the crowd had thrown bottles toward the officers, according to statements later made by police. But when protesters reached the corner of 4th and College Streets at 9:29 p.m., the march was calm and peaceful. As the protesters kept walking, it became clear that CMPD had blocked all exit points along the block.
Hands up!
Don't shoot!
Hands up!
Don't shoot!
Suddenly, at 9:30, officers positioned out of sight at the top of the block on Tryon Street ran out to close off 4th Street and immediately started firing tear gas and flashbang devices directly at the advancing crowd.
Okay. No!
State investigators said that police issued a warning, but witnesses we spoke to said they did not hear one. Justin LaFrancois, a local journalist who was live streaming the protest, describes the scene.
Nobody ever gave a dispersal order or said where people were supposed to leave or exit.
As people ran back, the officers at the southeast end of the block deployed tear gas into the fleeing crowd.
They closed the whole group in between a line of riot officers and a wall of tear gas.
The gas formed a thick wall of smoke that stretched across 4th Street.
We're trapped. They're shooting pepper balls at us. They've thrown out tear gas. flashbangs, smoke. They just chased everybody down this way. There's a line of riot police up there. There's a line of riot police back there.
As police closed in, people began screaming and gasping for air. Those on the sides of the crowd were the first to be hit with tear gas and other police weapons, while those in the middle were getting trampled by other panicked protesters. A third group of officers, positioned on the second floor of a parking garage, directly above the crowd, started shooting pepper balls at the protesters. Justin Mackerlane, a photographer who was caught in the Kettle, describes the chaos.
Not only were we getting hit from both sides, we were getting hit from the top as well.
Officials later said that the officers positioned in the garage had only been shooting at the walls above the crowd, but local journalist LaFrancois said he saw people get hit in the face, neck, and shoulders. Charlotte officials have denied that what the police had staged was a kettle at all, with the city council member, Ed Driggs, at one point blaming the wind, which he said created the sensation of being in a kettle. Investigators concluded that 2 exit points had remained open for people to disperse. But the streets were so filled with tear gas that those who were there said it was impossible to know that there wasn't a line of officers behind the smoke, and that in order to leave, they would have had to run through a thick cloud of choking gas. Christy Puckett-Williams, an organizer with the ACLU who was trapped in the kettle, described protesters having to make panicked decisions about their safest way out.
You shouldn't have to be placed in a position where you have to make those split-second decisions about how do I get oxygen in the midst of all this tear gas? How do I get to a safe place where I'm not getting shot with pepper bullets?
The actions of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department exposed hundreds of peaceful protesters to tear gas and other less-than-lethal weapons within a confined space. The careful positioning of the police and their statements caught on video clearly demonstrate that this outcome was premeditated and that the operation was executed with extensive coordination.
As soon as they get up on 4th, because we got a bottleneck now, Rory's squad is going to step out and hammer their ass.
The use of kettling in response to protests has proliferated, as other police tools have faced condemnation and legal challenges. But there has been little legal scrutiny of this tactic in particular. Kettling is largely unregulated in police departments, and training on its use includes little, if any, guidance on how to mitigate its harm, even at the most basic level of allowing people a way out. Because kettling is essentially a temporary movement of bodies that leaves behind no trace, it can be hard to prove that it happened after the fact. This diagram provides a summary of the CMPD tactics deployed on the evening of June 2nd. First, police closed off the northwest corner of East 4th Street with tear gas and flashbangs. The protesters remaining on the block run southeast, but police deploy a wall of tear gas at the exit point. Panicked and concentrated at the center of the block, they are shot at with pepper balls before ultimately escaping through a cloud of gas. Public officials, including mayors and police leaders, have offered wildly inconsistent explanations about when kettling may be appropriate, what it is, or whether it's even used at all.
First, let me say unequivocally that there was no pre-planned operation by CMPD Command, the Emergency Management Office, or anyone else to use officers to block protesters, box them in, or kettle, or anything else on the night of June the 2nd.
We that were there on June 2nd were irreparably damaged. We were changed forever. My friend and I thought we were going to die. To die. We weren't just afraid, we were terrified that these police were going to suffocate us to death. How does that community ever trust people who lay a trap for them to hurt them?